Okay, so we're now starting Reish Nun Gimel. This is where we get into Hilchos Bishul. This is Bishul Drabanan, famous Simonim. And Mishnah Berurah has a Hakdama here. The Hakdama which introduces the whole sugya of Kira. This is the famous parak in Shabbos. And the Mishnah Berurah just helps us out by giving us the background by way of introduction. So says the Mishnah Berurah in introduction to Reish Nun Gimel. Hine. Says the Mishnah Berurah, since there are lots of details in this long simon, and that the reader won't get confused, I'm extracting from the Sefer Machzah Shekel his Hagdama, sort of a kitzur of these dinim, so that the reader will be able to sort of fly through this and understand the whole story. Sheyesh inyan Shehiya ve'inyan Chazara. There are two areas here. There's Shehiya and there is Chazara. What does that mean? Shehiya mikri shenoisin tavshil me'erev Shabbos al gabi kira. Shehiya means you put a pot of food on erev Shabbos on an oven. Lo derech hatmona. It's not that the food is cooked and you're wrapping it to keep it warm, but rather you're putting an uncooked pot of food on the oven before Shabbos, and you're leaving it there, and Shabbos morning it will be cooked and good to go. That's what Shehiya is, leaving an uncooked pot of food on the oven on Erev Shabbos, and it will stay there, and in the course of Shabbos, a picture your chulent or something like that. V'chazara mikri, chazara is a separate issue. V'chazara mikri k'shenichem Erev Shabbos al gabi kira. You're there, your food is there on Erev Shabbos. V'Shabbos noitli me'akira v'rotz l'achzir shenis al gabi kira. On chazara is a separate issue. You want to take it off the oven, or whatever the flame or whatever it is, and return it and put it there on Shabbos. So for example, Friday night, you want to have some nice chulent, and then you want to put the chulent back onto the, let's say, the oven, the gas, the crock pot. We'll discuss all the details on Friday night because you need it for Shabbos day. That involves chazara. V'zeu ikadin chazara lekula alma. That's the main halacha of chazara. Avol yesh oidin chazara. There is another one. Shenot li me'erev Shabbos on chashecha magzer. You actually put it back on erev Shabbos. K'muvur b'sif beis b'hagah. Okay, so what has he said so far? He's in the introduction, before we even started the Mechaber, with Reish Nun Gimel, the introduction, the Mishnah Berurah says there's something called Shehiya and Chazara. Shehiya is where you put an uncooked pot of food on the fire or the oven before Shabbos, and you just leave it there for Shabbos morning. And Chazara is where you take it off and you put it back. Now, this is the famous Machlikas. There is a famous Machlikas in Kira at the beginning between Chananya and the Rabbanan. Chananya holds that if the food is cooked, which is half cooked, or a third cooked, then so long as it's Kameichel ben Drusai, either a half or a third cooked, you're allowed to leave it on the kira, on the oven, even if that oven has not been cleared of all coals, that you've covered the coals with ash. Now we're going to talk about the contemporary equivalent of that. That means you've sort of put a blech on, you've put a silver foil lining to the crock pot, these sort of things. So that's the equivalent. Chacham say no. Even if it's not grufa ketuma, that means you have not removed all the coals back of the oven of old, or you have not put ash over the coals, i.e., you haven't done some sort of equivalent of garfa katum nowadays. Ela im kain is special kol tzarchei. It's got to be fully cooked. Umitstamik veraloi, and if it stays there longer, it will actually deteriorate. The quality of the food will go down. Now, that's the Machlokas Chananya and Rabbanan. Obereish Perek Kira Tanan, in the beginning of Perek Kira, we learn the Mishnah says Kira shehisikuha, the gesef of eitzim, Kira which is fueled, which is fired up with gefes, which is olive bits, of eitzim or with wood. Lo yitin ache yigroif or ache yitin es efer. you're not allowed to yitain until you can't put it on the kira until you've removed all the coals, or until you've put the ephah, you've done ketuma, you put the ephah on the coals. And the Shas asks, "Hi lo yitain desnan." When it says lo yitain there in the Mishnah, rotzaloma lo yashe, does it refer to Shehiya? Elem kein gar v'kotum v'asik rabbanon dechananya, and that goes like the rabbanon of Chananya, that you can't put it on there until you've done gar v'kotum. Oy lo yitain rotzaloma lo yachazir. Is he referring to Shehiya or Chazara? Avol Shehiya muteres, and if it's referring to Chazara, but Shehiya would be allowed. I feel ain't a gar v'kotum, even if it's not gar v'kotum, v'asik Chananya. And it's not this question, does that Mishnah go like the Rabbanon or Chananya, is not resolved. Or Pascha Arifa Ramam Va'imdi B'Shitasam Lishes Tnan Rabbanon de Chananya. The Rif and the Rambam, they're Machmeh, and they follow like the Rabbanon. And therefore, even to do Shehiya, you need it to be gar for kotum. No, it's talking about Chazara there in the Mishnah. But to do Shehiya, that would be allowed even if it's not garf. Mishnah is bashel k'maychel ben drusoi, so long as it's cooked k'maychel ben drusoi u'k'chananya. The first shitta is going to be of the Mechaber, is going to be the Rif and the Rambam, which is Machmi, like the Rabbanon. And therefore that follows Chananya. So just to summarize the summary, yeah, there is a famous machlokes between Chananya and the Rabbanon in the first Mishnah of Kira, which is the third or fourth parak of Shabbos, and this is the whole sugya of Shehiya and Chazara. Shehiya again is leaving a dish there from before Shabbos, and you're going to take it off on Shabbos day, and Chazara is you take it off and you put it back on. Now, think about a chulam pot. Think about Chazara has lots of applications nowadays. There is what is the whole concern? The concern is primarily we'll see Shemi that if you've got your chulam there on Friday night, and you want to put up the flames, you want to stoke the coals, that's the concern. And nowadays you might turn the gas up a little bit, or turn the knobs up a little bit to high. That's the concern. So Chazal say that you can't do that. You can't leave a pot which is sort of uncooked there on the stove from before Shabbos. Now the machlokes between Chananya and the Rabbanon is the Rabbanon say that the only thing to do is you've got to make sure it's gar for kotum, which means gar you either take all the coals out of the oven, or kotum you put the ash over the coals. The contemporary equivalent would be you have a blech. That means you line the crock pot or whatever it is. You cover the gas rings. You put a blech on the gas rings. That's the equivalent of gar for kotum. Now the shaila is, what state does the food have to be in? If it's the Rabbanon, it's got to be, you can't put it. You need a blech unless it's fully cooked. According to Chananya, it only has to be half cooked. But nowadays you'll see that's why we have a blech. We have a blech on our crock pots and things. That's what it all comes down to. And the Rif and the Rambam, the first shit of the Rambam and the Mechaber is you passing out the Rif and the Rambam, that we go like the Rabbanon, and the Yeshomrim goes like Rashi and Tosfos, that we pass like Chananya. Okay, let's do the Mechaber. Let's get into some more detail. Kira. Shehi asuya kadeira. You've got an oven which is like a big oven. Kadeira v'shefsin. It's like a big pot. V'shefsin al pia kadeira l'mayla. And you put the dish, the pot on top of it. V'yesh v'makom shefisas shtei kadeiros. And you've got room for 2 pots on top of it. So there are different types of kiras in the times of Chazal, but this is a 2-pot kira. So that means it's big enough that you can put 2 pots on it. Im hasekes begefes. If it's fueled inside the oven, you've got refuse of olives and things like that. Or wood. You can't put a dish there from before Shabbos to leave it there till Shabbos day, unless that dish is fully cooked. For whom its stomach pirush v'haylech v'chaser. It's sort of if you leave it there, it will get it will deteriorate. V'raloi deleka lemecha shemiyachata. Because in that situation, if it's fully cooked, you're not going to increase the flame because it will deteriorate. It will make it worse. Oy shel chai, or it's raw, shalom is special klal, that it's not cooked at all. The kivin shuchai masiach daita mimena ad lemachar. That if it's raw, then you're not going to bother because all the stoking is not going to help you because it won't help. And throughout the night, you wake up Shabbos morning, it will be done. But without chitu, it will be okay. So let's see the Mishnah Berurah on that. V'sheifsin al piyah. So again, that's the shit of the Rabbanon. V'sheifsin al piyah. You can put it inside the oven as well. There is room inside the oven in the ovens of Chazal. Again, you're allowed to do that if it's got to a situation where it's fully cooked and it's mistamik viralo, which means it's sort of going to deteriorate if it as it continues cooking. That there is an issa unless if it's mistamik v'yafalo, where it's going to improve if it's cooking a little bit more, even alpia, where you keep it on top of the oven. Okay, im husaka mishum dechol hani avdi gecholim, because all of these make coals. V'chashin shem yechate bohem, and that is the overriding concern over here. Shem yechate, you might come to stoke the coals to accelerate the cooking process. Shehi psoile shel zeisim. The only way to do that is to remove all the gefes, which is the psoile shel zeisim. V'yesh oimrim do adim psoile shel shumshamin, sesame refuse. To gam hem b'chal gefes hanizka b'mishnah, that's included. V'chudlakama b'siman reish nun zayin sif gimel l'inin hatmana. It's fueled also or by wood. V'adin pechamin coals v'gali behema gasa or animal refuse or things like that. Litein oleha, to put on top of the oven. V'adin im hoya nosun tzorech lesalik k'shegi ezman chashecha. If it's not fully cooked, according to this opinion, you actually have to take it off. Im lo nisbashlo kol tzorcha, unless it's fully cooked, you have to take it off of the oven, or if it's not fully cooked, or if it's actually going to improve further, because Chazal made the Gezeira, Shem Yechata, that you might come to stoke the coals and be over the Issa of either Mavir or Bishul, or whatever it is. To put it there, leave it there before Shkia, to leave it there for the night's food. Elim ken nispashel hainu to kivish nispashel legamre, according to the Rabbanon, according to the first opinion of the Mechaber, since it's fully cooked, achim tispashel yoset tistamik l'ra, that if it cooks more, it will actually deteriorate. Lo chashin and lechitu, we're not worried you're going to come to stoke the coals. Litna oz umuta oz litna oz lechatchila. So if your food, your chulent, is fully cooked from before Shabbos, to keep it on an oven or an equivalent without garfa cotton would be allowed, but it's got to be fully cooked and mistamik virale. What does mistamik virale mean? Pirush, the kol dover shehu otzev kashiyovish v'nischavetz machmas rev habishol. You'll be upset that if it actually it shrinks a little bit, it just it's going to deteriorate. The opposite is someach. If you just have a quick look at 7, he says, well, what if you've got a dish where some of it is mistamik virale and some of it's mistamik v'yofale. In other words, you've got a mixture. Some of the meat, for example, is fully cooked, but the other stuff, the beans, are not fully cooked. So he says, Im yesh b'kedera, in number 7, Im yesh b'kedera gam dovish mistamik v'yofale, v'gam dovish mistamik virale, kasav ha-prima godim, lekamon sheholchim acha haroiv. You look at the majority of the dish, of the pot, if the majority of the pot will deteriorate by leaving it for further cooking, so we're not worried that you might come to do chitui. Let's just do 2 more lines of the Mechaber. On the second line now. But if it's semi-cooked but not fully cooked, or it's fully cooked but it will improve with further cooking, then we're worried you might come to stoke it, and then you're not allowed to leave the pot on the oven unless you've removed all the coals, i.e. you've put a blech on of some sort. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Tess, you got some meat in there which is so raw that it's now Friday late afternoon, and you're going to put it there, and it's not going to be ready for the night. So we're not worried because it's not going to help you. V'shad dvarim shel kali abishul, which cook much more easily, lo mani mashu chai, v'chein mashikosav lekame chaticha chaya, hanu gam kein boso. Okay. Shalin is special sif cotton yud, pirush, oz shari litno somach l'shkia mamish. Then in that situation, you can put it close to Shabbos. Avalim nosim b'yijayim, also if you put it early afternoon, then not to kvan is special ksas kedim Shabbos, because if you put it on, let's say Shabbos comes in at 7, you put it on at 4 or 5, then by the time Shabbos comes in, it's already somewhat cooked, and therefore you're going to have a problem, because being chayto, accelerating the cooking process, may help you. V'tzorich l'salik k'shigiyah zman Shabbos, elim kein is special kol tzorka kodim l'zeh. Okay, klal. That was going on the top line of the Mechaba. Shalin is special klal. Da'afilu chaysim hatavshil. Sorry, hucham hatavshil nami mutala hashais. Even if it's warm, you're allowed to do shehiya. V'lo gazun shemechatzik given the etzem abishul and is special klal. Okay, so we'll discuss more details tomorrow. But that is the opening to Kira. You've got the famous machlokas, the Rabban and Hananya. Machlokas we paskin like, and shehiya is leaving a dish there from before Shabbos, and the concern is shemi echata, that you'll speed up the process, and chazara is taking it off and putting it back on Shabbos. We'll get to those details in Mitzvah Hashem. Okay, so to be continued tomorrow in Mitzvah Hashem.